Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Design System London Online, the second edition. We are very happy to be here. As always, we have a bit of a delay. There is a live stream. I'm talking. You're probably going to see me looking very confused in the beginning, but here we are. Very excited to be back. So a little extra welcome to anybody who joined us on our last one back in December. And also, if you've ever been to any of our live conferences or live events, really cool to see you here. So as I said, we're back with a second edition. My name is Luis, for those of you who don't know that, which is probably everybody. So my name is Luis and I'm your host today. I'm head of product design at YLD, who is our sponsor. And in my job, I get to work with a lot of engineers, a lot of designers, a lot of product people, and I get to come across many design systems and I worked on many projects with design systems. So for me, this is extra exciting to be here. I also work a lot with our marketing team and our community team, which means that I get to do this kind of things, being part of presentations, being part of webinars, doing our conferences, etc. All very good stuff. But this presentation today, it's got nothing to do with me. We got three fantastic speakers with us. Last time, actually, we were talking about how to not solve a problem twice by actually getting a design system. And that's how the industry has changed and now gone from what's a design system to quite a lot of people having a few of those. And we also heard about evolution of the design system KPIs and a design system from a consultant to a design internal client team. How do you do that handover smoothly? Why do I bring this up? Because we have some really fab content today as well. We are going to be hearing about building a design system at scale. So continuing on pretty much from some of the stuff that we talked about last time, we're going to be hearing about theming and the NewsKit design system. And we're also going to see what a design system could look like for the Metaverse. So exciting topics indeed. I'm sure there's going to be some fantastic learnings. And as always, hopefully some good takeaways for you guys. Three fantastic speakers. But before we get to the speakers and to our fantastic talk, we are going to do some logistics because we just have to. Otherwise, we might not even be a real webinar. So here we go. First of all, we need to talk a little bit about the code of conduct, which you can find in the menu bar on the live stream. Pretty standard stuff. Just keep your language clean, be kind to each other, and don't share any inappropriate content. Pretty straightforward stuff, to be honest. For those of you who've not been to live stream on YouTube before, there is a section for conversation, and that section there is you can chat, you can ask things from each other. But if you have questions for the speakers, which I'm sure you will, then you can please use our Q&A link, which will be up there as well. Okay, so there is also, of course, social media, because that's how people know that we exist and that we are here. So I would love for you guys to tweet and share your favorite learnings. And if there is any quotes, etc., please use hashtag DSL and hashtag design systems. If you're not following us on Twitter already, you should. It's at DSLConf, DSLCONF. And obviously, if you're not following us on Meetup, you should as well, because that's how you know when our next DSL will be. All right, so a lot of talk about DSL, but what is DSL and who are we? So just a quick reminder for those of you who might have stumbled across us and don't really know what we do. So DSL is basically Design System London. Formerly it used to be known as Digital Product London. Now we should probably call it Design System Online, because we are pretty much online all the time at the moment for obvious reason. So the idea here is that we will gather top digital product minds to explore and explain and discuss challenging concepts, anything from product design to engineering culture, with the main focus on and around design systems. Obviously, we do welcome other product topics as well, because design system is so broad and so wide. If you want to bring your organization closer to our community, you can either help us hosting, or you can sponsor an event, or why not speak? We are welcoming speakers of all experiences. We have actually today, we have a first-time speaker. We have someone who's got really a lot of experience. We have someone who's spoken before. We welcome all of it. There is a form that you can fill out if you would like to become a speaker for our future talks. Before we almost done now, but before we go, we are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. So I would like to call in my colleague Maria. Maria Luis, welcome from WildD. She's going to be telling us a little bit about WildD and what they are looking for at the moment.
Yes, hi, Luis. Thank you for that intro. Hi, everyone. Hope you're feeling all right. As Luis said, I'm Maria. I am part of the talent and people team from WildD, this event sponsor. I just wanted to give you all a very brief introduction on who we are before our awesome talks begin. So WildD is a software engineering and product design consultancy, and we work with quite a big range of diverse clients on different projects, while our goal is to always help them improve their digital and technical skills. We are able to do this thanks to our collaborative teams of software engineering, product design, QA automation, and platform engineers as well. Our teams are always focused on finding the most creative and new ways possible to help our clients while sharing their knowledge. And that's why you can always see us sponsoring events such as this one. We're always looking for good software engineers and product designers. And at the moment, we're also looking to hire platform engineers as well to integrate our perm team. So if you're interested in changing jobs, or if you're not interested at all, you can always reach us out via LinkedIn, through our website, just to, if you're curious about how WildD works, what kind of projects we have. So please feel free to check our LinkedIn page and our website, and feel free to reach us out if you want. And yeah, I mean, I would say that's it from me, Luis, and I'll give the word back to you.
Thank you very much for that. Great stuff. So yes, there is obviously a lot of things to find out about WildD. Check out the website. Okay, so we are almost ready. This is the moment we have been waiting for. We are going to meet our fantastic speakers. I would like to welcome Reza, Xin, and Rafaela to join me here on the digital stage. Yes, there we go. We got Reza, we got Rafaela, hello there, and we got Xin. Everyone's here. Hello, how are you all feeling today?
Great.
Amazing. Great. Getting some nods. Yes, that's good. Excellent. So you guys are quite far spread out in the world. Actually, that reminds me, if you haven't told us where you're in the world yet, do it on the chat. Last time we had people from all over, so it's always interesting to hear. So that's to everybody watching. I'm going to start by asking Reza, where are you based?
I'm based in North London.
In North London, fantastic. Up the road from me, I'm based in South London. Right now, though, I am much further away. I'm in the Canary Islands at the moment. So here we go. Xin, where are you?
I'm based in East London.
Oh, you're in East London. Okay. Here I am saying that we're very spread out, and it turns out that we haven't even left London yet. Okay, Rafaela, where are you?
Toronto, Canada.
Yes, I knew we were spread out. There we go. Thank you very much. So we got London, we got Canada. This is amazing. So I thought that I would basically ask you all one question before we get going, just so we get to know each other. But before I do that, actually, I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit. Like, where we already know where you're based. Where do you work? What do you do? Anything that's in your mind at the moment. And then also my question, which is basically, this pandemic has obviously been quite a lot of pressure on a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of change. But is there anything good that has brought with that for you personally? It could be a work situation, your private situation, whatever. It'd be just interesting to hear. So I'm going to start with Rafaela. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raf. And yes, I'm from Toronto. I work at Gem3 Canada. And it's basically an agency for digital space and experiences. And the pandemic has brought to me, I think, as well as you, Louis, the remote work. So I can work anywhere in the world. any time zone, and that's fantastic. And I get to work with people all around the world, and I get to see new cultures, I get to learn new languages, so that's completely amazing. And that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. Great. Jin, what has been meant for you? Anything good that has happened at all?
Yes, so first of all, I'm Xin. I'm software engineer at NewsUK. I work on the design system. One thing that happened to me is that I got the opportunity to explore my local community, go to the local butchers, a lot of parks around me, and local shops. And I also found my love for pie and mash. Don't know if you tried, but yeah, I really like one of the local pie and mash shop we had around here.
No, I think that's fantastic. I lived in London for quite a long time. You got to appreciate the pie and mash. So yeah, well done. That's awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, and there's so many good local things that you didn't realize before because you were so busy going to the central or something. Yeah, I've got that same experience as well. That's cool. And Reza, how about you?
Hi, I'm Reza. I work at JPMorgan Asset Management. I guess the last 2 years, the pandemic has made me really grateful for the kind of work that we do, right? We're all very privileged that we work in like the knowledge industry and we get to sit at home, work online, work at our desks, and get paid really good money to do it, right? So seeing like the frontline staff over the last 2 years and how hard they've had to work has just, yeah, made me really appreciate the privilege that we have in this industry.
Excellent. I think that's very true. Very well said. I think that's just one thing. If anyone who works in tech or in digital, we are lucky to still be able to have been working throughout the whole pandemic. And as you say, being able to take our work home and continue to do that. So absolutely. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm basically going to move into why everyone's here. We are going to get going with the talks. I know that's what we're going to do. So first of all, we're going to hear from Reza. You're going to talk to us about the design system at JPMorgan. After that, we're going to hear from NewsKit, and Jin, you're going to tell us a little bit more about the design system at NewsKit. And then we got Rafaela is going to join us for some speculating on what the design system could look like in the metaverse. Yes, you heard it right here. Excellent. Cool. In that case, Jin and Rafaela, I'm going to ask you two to come back later. Thank you so much. Reza, the digital stage is all yours.
Thanks, Luis. Okay, great. Can I confirm you can see my screen?
We can indeed see your screen. Go for it.
Perfect. So hello and welcome to my presentation about building a design system at JPMorgan Asset Management. I'll be discussing our journey, our success stories, and most importantly, our lessons learned. But before I do that, an introduction to myself. My name is Reza. I'm an engineering lead at JPMorgan Asset Management. I'm responsible for the engineering behind our design system, as well as our overall front-end strategy. I spend about 50% of my time being a product engineer, where I build new features for our employees, and the other 50% of my time leading a team of engineers building our internal design system. I think it's really important that anyone who works in a technical capacity on a design system to continue to build other products using that design system and build that experience of what it feels like to be a consumer of your design system. So at this point, it's important for me to highlight that all the views expressed here today are my own and not my employer's. And due to the fact that the product is internal only and not public, I'm limited by my ability to show screenshots of the design system or any of its code. So what is asset management? I get asked this question all the time by my friends and family. And the most relatable way I can explain this is hopefully everyone who's on this call who's employed is putting some money away every year towards retirement. Now, if when you came to retire, if the money that you had to retire with was basically the sum of all the money that you'd been depositing over the years that you'd been working, you wouldn't be very happy, right? It would be a glorified current account. So the job of an asset manager is to understand what is your financial goal, what's your target, in this case, when are you going to retire, and understand your risk appetite. But then invest your money so that when the day comes that get your long-deserved break, you'll have plenty of money to retire with. And they don't just do that for individuals, they also do it for companies. So from the small to the very large, from non-profit organizations all the way to Fortune 500. So who are JPMorgan Asset Management? So the number one metric of an asset manager is how much assets under management they've got. So how much of their clients' money do they manage? It says here on the slide that it's 2.5 trillion, but as of last year, that's actually gone up to $3.1 trillion. And you can see here a breakdown of where that's being invested in the markets. Besides an asset manager, JPMorgan is also responsible for Chase, which is the #1 US retail bank. Apparently, half of all households in the US are Chase customers, and Chase recently came to the UK. We also have an investment bank and a private bank. So if you're on this call and you've got a net worth over 10 million, then you can consider yourself as being one of their clients as well. So when I joined JPMorgan Asset Management about 8 years ago, the state of UI applications was very different to how it is now. Users had to go to different places when they wanted to perform their roles, from native desktop apps to loads of different web applications and web pages. It lacked any sort of cohesiveness, integration between the apps, or a shared or unified design language. So that's where we come in. My broader team is the core UI engineering team for the firm, and we're responsible for building an end-to-end internal technology platform that houses around 122 applications. We also aid hundreds of developers in being able to build these applications by producing tech for them to then go on and build great user experiences. From a shared desktop environment where these apps are deployed to a super-powered web browser and a React component library. So with our offering, we now have 1,500 technologists building applications that feel like one cohesive experience to an employee. So today I'll be talking about my experience building a design system, challenges we faced, the unique approach we took to migrating our users, and the lessons I learned along the way. So to understand the challenge, let's take a moment to rewind the clock to 2016 and understand the landscape that we're in. So as I mentioned, we're responsible for this end-to-end internal technology platform, and it has roughly 122 apps. That's an app for every type of employee that supports the investment cycle. So that's traders, portfolio managers, research analysts, salespeople, operations, compliance. And roughly 50% of the assets under management by our firm go through this internal technology platform. And that equates to about 3,000 active users. So in 2015, we had applications being built natively in C#.NET, and we wanted to start transitioning to UIs using web technologies, where hiring would be easier and where we felt UI development was innovating faster. Our initial offering to developers was a themed version of Bootstrap 3. This allowed globally distributed teams to build applications quickly in the web and have them resemble each other, or at least look as though they're part of the same suite of apps. We also offered a style guide website, very similar to the Bootstrap 3 one that you see on the screen, where developers could go and see HTML elements that they could copy and paste off of the website into their application. And so long as they were also using our Bootstrap style sheet, they were up and running. So what was good about this approach? So this was really useful for that initial period of rapid growth that we had, and it helped a lot of developers cut their teeth for the first time on building a web user interface. It helped us achieve a very base level of consistency, styling, and branding. It enabled developer teams to choose their own front-end framework, as our offering was a global SaaS style sheet that could be used irrespective of what UI framework you were on. And finally, Bootstrap was very popular in the industry at the time, so many developers already had experience with it, or the new developers were able to find documentation easily online. So what was not so good about this approach? So once developers had copied and pasted that HTML from the website into their application, they'd essentially disconnected themselves from the core design system team. That meant we couldn't push new enhancements, We couldn't change look and feel and behavior of these elements, and they wouldn't benefit from any upstream bug fixes that our team had done. And shipping global style sheets and a website of HTML snippets became increasingly limiting. After the basic elements like buttons, toggles, and drop-downs, it became challenging to offer more complex components that encapsulated interaction and state and other UX decisions. We also found it increasingly challenging to provide the right level of technical support for teams using all these different front-end frameworks. It meant that in our team, we had to have people who were experts in each of these frameworks in order to provide the in-depth technical assistance that teams expected us to give. It also meant that anytime we built a component or enhanced a component or fixed a bug, we had to do it for every single framework that we supported and built a component for. We discovered that when custom UI was being built for products and was a candidate to be reused and shared across applications, often that code couldn't be reused because it was built for one framework and the application it wanted to be reused in was in a different framework. So a lot of that reuse opportunity was being lost. And finally, when we wanted to build more complex components using third-party open source libraries, quite often each framework had its own go-to library. So for typeheads, for example, React had one that was really good, Angular had another one that was really good. But when you put the two of them side by side, they had completely different UX. So it was very difficult to achieve consistency across multiple frameworks. And then upgrades were really difficult. So we had a phase where we went from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4, and our users told us that this upgrade cycle was really difficult. It shows that these CSS frameworks like Bootstrap are quite challenging to upgrade once applications have been built using them. And as developers are using our offerings more and more, and as they're becoming more mature, the developer experience that they were wanting as well was also increasing. They wanted things like autocomplete in their code editors, warnings and errors when they use components wrong, and a much easier upgrade path. So we decided that in order to meet the increasing sophistication of our users, we needed to increase the sophistication of our offering. I have the phrase design system here crossed out because in many ways, what we already had was a design system of sorts. But what we really need to do was level up our tech implementation so our UXers could further express their design decisions into those applications that developers were building. So what were our objectives? Well, when we're starting off on a mission like this, it's worth understanding fully what your organization's priorities are in terms of a design system. And in our case, our users wanted the following: to reduce our time to market. They wanted to be able to build apps quicker in response to employees' requirements, using a standard UI library and UX patterns. They wanted a greater user experience and user satisfaction, and they wanted to increase consistency across applications. So let's talk about a topic that often doesn't get much coverage in the design system community. How did we handle migrating all of these applications? So as mentioned earlier, we have over 100 applications, and we knew that the majority of the development teams wouldn't be able to stop building new functionality in their apps to do a complete big bang rewrite of the UI using our new design system library. It had to support incremental adoption, where teams could move to the design system component by component. It had to support the old Bootstrap solution being usable alongside the new design system components. And we needed both the new design system and the older stuff to be able to coexist with one another and look identical. So what can we improve? Well, we had a number of years of observing how product teams were using our previous offering. So we were able to rethink our approach to help improve things. We had engineers reaching out to us, asking questions all the time about how to use a particular UI element. And despite there being a documentation website, it was clear that developers needed something that was within the context of their development environment, that would guide them on how to use a component. That's why we invested in building all our components using TypeScript, so that our developers would get autocomplete in their code editors, documentation would be auto-generated from the TypeScript props, and they would get errors when they were using props incorrectly. The amount of code reuse between applications was being hampered by us having various UI frameworks. And building a component library for multiple UI frameworks was costly and really time-consuming. So we decided to standardize on a single front-end framework and make it our recommendation. We chose React. By committing to supporting a design system built in React and offering enhancements only through that product, teams who hadn't made a choice yet went with the decision that we'd made, and other teams gradually started adopting instead of using their own chosen framework. We also saw there was a desire for our users to have a more modular offering, so they could upgrade individual parts rather than how it was previously, which was to get a new style for a new HTML snippet, they have to upgrade the entire monolithic style sheet and take all of the changes in at once. Breaking our offering up into separate NPM modules, versioning those independently, gave us the flexibility to release modules at different rates and for our users to be able to upgrade iteratively. We found it difficult as a team to maintain and enhance our monolithic style sheet. As it grew in size, we didn't have the sort of tooling that we'd expect, like a compiler or the ability to do automated unit testing to spot bugs. We also noticed that teams were often encountering issues with styles clashing with one another. For example, if they copied and pasted a HTML element from our website into their applications, sometimes they'd see the styling was a little bit off because any of the global CSS or Sass that was in their application was actually affecting the elements that they'd copied in. So to solve this, we moved to a CSS in JS framework. So what was our strategy around this migration? Well, as I said, we made a decision as a whole organization to unify on a single front-end framework, and we chose React due to its popularity, market share, community, and support in industry. We then built out a set of foundational components that wrapped around the existing Bootstrap implementation that teams were using. This meant that teams could remove existing HTML in their app and instead use our React components. Adoption could be iterative as the styles looked the same and functionality was identical. And this reduced the cost for app teams to slowly migrate. We then understood from our users and UX designers what their highest priority components were and built a few of those to curry favor amongst both groups. We launched the design system, we listened to early feedback, and we observed our component analytics to see how developers were using our components in their projects. Once teams were using our components, we began refactoring the innards of the components to move away from the styles coming from the Bootstrap classes and instead use our own approach for implementing styling. So we use TypeScript and CSS and JS frameworks for a better developer experience and componentization of styles. Then over time, as teams upgrade their components using NPM, our components would be moving with each update to a different design language and technology stack. And our UX designers will be able to push more of their design decisions through to developers using these components. It's no longer a case of developers copying and pasting snippets off of a website. It's more about using our product as it evolves over time. The downside of this approach is that it shifts the effort levels away from your end users to the core design system team, because there needs to be a level of discipline to be able to do a multi-stage migration strategy like this. But we think it's worth it if it means it's easier for our users. So why believe me when I talk about any of this, right? Well, why should you listen to me? So our current status is that we have around 73% adoption. I pulled these stats just before this meeting by using a tool we have that allows us to scan through all the code bases in the firm. So it's worth mentioning that 26%, some of those might be end-of-life applications that still exist as code bases, but aren't things that are going to be maintained and have developers working on them. Our users were excited about the increased developer experience with TypeScript. Our website benefited from auto-generated prop types, and now users can live code in our new website. All of this is only possible because we standardized on a single framework. Most applications are now heavily reliant on this, and I've got a few stats here about what we think our value is to the firm. So as you all probably know, valuing a design system is something that's very difficult to do. We estimated that we have about $7 million economic value that we're adding to the firm based off of component reuse. And the number of developers using our packages increased 350% in 2021 in comparison to 2020. So it shows that you can take a whole organization and move them to a new stack with this strategy. So the part I like the most, the lessons learned. So some of these are going to be things that you've heard before and you definitely agree with, and some of these are going to be controversial. So I'll just caveat with that. But these are things I wish I knew before I started. The standardize on a single front-end framework. I must have said this already 3 or 4 times whilst I've been speaking, but if you just pick one, there's very little value in this day and age to build things using multiple UI frameworks. I know as developers, we love to pick different technology and use different technology to learn it, but really it's about being responsible with your organization's investment. Why use multiple frameworks when you can use one and then reuse all the code across multiple apps? As a result of this decision, we were also able to double down on best practices in those frameworks. So a technical product owner is a must. This is one of the more controversial ones, but I stand by it. A design system is a product, and it's one of the most technical products that you could build, besides perhaps something in artificial intelligence or machine learning. So you're building a product that will be used first by software engineers, and one of your key success metrics is adoption from them and satisfaction from them. Of course, you care what your end users care about your design system, but they're never going to see apps using your design system unless a developer first adopts it, takes it all the way to production. That's why I think it's important for a product owner to be technical on a design system. In our case, our product owner was someone with a product and finance background who really wanted to become more technical. So we had to spend loads of time doing in-depth sessions where we showed all the tech that we need to build in order to build the design system that both our developers, our UXers, and our end users would enjoy. It's only with this level of appreciation for the technology that we're all able to talk in the same language, but also so that our product owner can prioritize the kind of work that usually gets overlooked. So that's things like TypeScript types, automated versioning, canary releases of components, and deployment pipelines. It's easy to not prioritize those over more flashy deliverables like new components, but they are, at the end of the day, just as important to your adoption. Today, design systems are ways of building and scaling the systematic deliverable of user interfaces. It's not for print, it's not for manufacturing, for software, and not having a grounding in how software is built will put you at a disadvantage. This is the most controversial one. Stop blocking class names. So here's an example, right? Is you have a developer and they're using a component of yours and they need to get some additional control. So they add a class name to your component and add some additional styles. And the scenario goes like this, where the UX and the design team don't want any customizations to be happening to styles, right? They don't want to be in a situation in which a demo happens in front of senior management and something looks weird because of a developer's choice. But in practice, we found that this wasn't actually the reason why developers were doing this. They were doing this because they were trying to match a UX mockup that they'd been given, and they couldn't get that pixel perfect look without getting a little bit of control. But anyway, as a tech team, we go ahead and we implement what we think is our way of controlling the component by preventing class names and inline styles. So we do something like this. But this is just the illusion of control, because a developer, they can just do that, wrap it in another div, attach a class name. So what are we actually trying to solve here? And why am I talking about this subject? Well, I think this one topic kind of sums up the difficult part of building a design system. It's about keeping the UX stakeholders happy, keeping developers happy, keeping product owners happy. And we all have our differing incentives here. And the way it goes is when a team comes to you and says, well, I need you to enhance the component to add X, Y, and Z features, the ideal world would be that the UX team would understand if that's something generic to be shared. And if so, then we would add it to the component. But in reality, that's not what happens, right? We don't have infinite number of engineers that can turn around changes to components in time to match the speed at which our product teams are going. So the dev team then goes ahead and does a workaround, and you just won't hear about them afterwards. So we think it's valuable to allow teams to do this in order to be able to still get to the market quickly. But this, coupled with our analytics, means that we can pay attention to what's being done, then interview later on to understand if there's something that we could incorporate to the component later on when we have the opportunity. And finally, the last two I had was code mods and analytics. So a code mod is a script that a developer can write that can take code from one state to another. And I think it's really important to prioritize having an engineer in your team learn how to write these well, because we were in scenarios where we had to get hundreds of applications to perform the same task in their code base. And if we'd asked each team to do that themselves, there's no way it would have been done in a timely way. Instead, we created a code mod script. And now each of those teams runs that script once in their application, and it just migrates their app across. We're going to be looking to use this more and more as we do breaking changes in components so that teams can move from version X to version Y without having to do loads of code changes on their side. And finally, analytics. So because we're an internal design system, we've been able to implement analytics in a way that perhaps you wouldn't be able to if it was an open source public component library. So we actually scan for the usage of our component code in various apps, and we upload it to a central place. So at any given time, a tech person or a UX person or a product person can check every occurrence of those code components and understand what context they're being used in. So what page, which component is it nested in, which props are they passing in, which combination of props are they using. So we've been doing these analytics now for over a year, but there's definitely an opportunity here for us to build some tooling that allows us to discover this data in a more natural way. Because as you can imagine, it's quite unstructured data, so it can be a little bit tricky to navigate through it. So thanks so much for your time. I've put my details on screen if anyone wants to follow up with any questions, and the obligatory we're hiring. So please Google either front-end engineer on Spectrum Design System or asset management Spectrum product owner for some of the roles that I have open. Thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic. Okay, so let me see here. Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Reza. You almost managed to convince me about the product owner. I was one of those people who were like, what is he talking about? But actually, what you said made a lot of sense. We're going to come back to that later. I've seen in the chat here that somebody had a question. So just to remind everybody, we are going to have a Q&A afterwards. There is a link that you should be able to see on the live stream where you can put your questions. Reza, thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm just going to have a little quick look in the chat and see where we are. We have people from Stockholm, Sweden. Hey, Sweden. Fairfax, near Washington, DC. I told you we are spread out. So we got more Southeast London, always. Come on, London. Holland, the Netherlands. Brilliant. Lisbon, Portugal. And then what else have I missed? Portugal as well. Fantastic. Richmond upon Thames. Yeah. I think that's it. We got a lot of people from a lot of different places. This is so cool. So that was our first speaker based in London. We're now going to head to our next speaker based in London. I want to welcome Jin, if you want to come in and take center stage. The digital stage is all yours.
Cool. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
That's great. Just to check everyone can see it.
Yeah, we can indeed see it.
Well, my name is Xin. I'm one of the software engineer at NewsUK, and today I want to talk to you about theming in our NewsKit design system. Just a summary we will cover today. First of all, just a quick intro to NewsKit design system. Then we will have a look at what is the same and why it's needed. Then we will go straight into NewsKit theming system in our design system. We'll look at the foundations, presets, and different ways of customizing the theme. At the end, we have a small demo to wrap everything up. A bit about NewsKit design system. It's about 2.5 years old. Currently, we have 8 engineers and 5 designers working on this project. In terms of design, we use Figma. We have Figma libraries to help us to improve the design workflow. And our Figma libraries include the theme files where a brand can apply their own brand styles, the component libraries, of course, and then we have icon library, utility library, and sections library. And in terms of code, we have around 49 components available at the moment. They are all built using React, TypeScript, and Emotion.js. Currently, it's web products only, but in the future, we might add support for mobile apps as well. So currently, all our components are built in line with NewsUK's engineering standards. They are accessible, performant, and SEO considered. We also have a dedicated documentation site, newskit.co.uk. It's publicly available. For us, it's a shopfront for our design system. It provides easy access for our designers and engineers to access the different resources. And also the site will demo how to use our components, accessibility guidelines, and best practices. You will also find some code snippets and playgrounds where you can interact with our components. The whole site is built using NewsKit components. This is a great opportunity for us to stress test our components before we release them. And at last is a great place for us to showcase our work as well. I'll go straight to today's topic, which is about theming. So what is a theme? You can think of a theme as a set of variables or global tokens that you can apply globally to all of your components. And why do we need it? For example, as I mentioned, that theme can be used to create a specific visual style. For example, the user preferences for light theme and dark theme. And also you can use them to enforce design consistency. For example, on the Sun website, you can see on the top right-hand side, we have the fabulous section and the news section. They look almost identical. They're using same layout, typography. The only difference is the brand color. So we can make sure the design for those two sections are consistent at the same time, add a bit difference. Also at NewsUK, we support a lot of brands and they are all using NewsKit components. They all come in and want to have their own style. They want to maintain their own brand identity, for example, using their own color scheme. Instead of having the developers changing the components, adding CSS into each of the components, you can actually customize all of the components really in one go by changing a few universal variables in your theme. And I'm gonna show it in the demo later. So you can almost think of a themeable design system as a system that can scale with the needs of your organization. So let's say if they have a new brand, a new newspaper brand comes in, and they want to spin up a site really quickly. You can use NewsKit components with your own theme, your own style guide, and you can spin up the site very quickly. Cool. So I've talked a lot about the themeable design system. What is actually in our NewsKit theming system that makes it so special? One important part is our foundations. So the foundations, they are shareable across different products. They form the style guide of different brands, and they are defined by the different requirements from different brands, the accessibility guidelines, industry standards, and so on. And in NewsKit, we have those foundations in those 9 categories. And I mean the foundation tokens, if we have a look at sizing, for example, so foundation tokens, they are the lowest level variables in our system. So in most cases, they are a single map between a token and a value. So in this case, sizing 10, 20, 30 are mapped to 4 pixel, 8 pixel, and 12 pixel. Well, the colors, they are slightly different. So in colors, we have two sets of variables. We have the literal tokens and the contextual tokens. The literal tokens are basically adding a level of abstraction to our hard-coded hex value. Let's say that now you want to change it to a different shade of purple. Instead of finding everywhere in your code where this hex code is used, you can just change it in one place, and it will be applied to every component using this token. And most of the cases for literal token is a one-to-one map. While the contextual tokens, they added a further layer of abstraction, and they have been assigned a purpose. So in this case, in this example, the purple 50 is giving a context. It will be used for typography as a brand color. So hence is giving this token called ink brand. So the contextual token, what it allows us to do is to customize all our components, the whole site-wide in one go. And if you're actually considering when I should use literal token, when I should use contextual token, you can ask yourself if you want this value to change, if you're changing the theme. And if the answer is yes, then you should use a contextual token. Cool. So I've covered just two examples from our foundations, but you can check out more on our documentation site if you're interested. Now I'm going to go straight into presets because this is something we created and kind of defined that I think might be interesting. In NewsKit, we have 3 presets: a style preset, typography preset, and transition preset. And if you look at this example on the right-hand side, we basically grouped all the style-related tokens into one group. And we actually call it the style preset. Now, in order to use this style preset everywhere, we have created a reference to call it, given it a token called button outline primary. So what this allows us to do is to use this token everywhere in our components. It could be used in button or icon button. It's basically added an extra level of abstraction to the foundation tokens. And in terms of example, you can see this is what our button solid primary preset is looking like. It has different states, and within each state has sets of properties, and is mapping to the foundation tokens for color, border, and so on. As I mentioned, we support different sets of states. We also extended the support to support pseudo states. It's basically a combination of CSS states with pseudo classes. For example, valid hover or invalid hover. It just gives the extra option for designers or engineers to style that particular state if they want. Cool. The next one is typography preset. It's very similar to style preset. The only difference is that it's a grouping of font-related tokens. In this case, utility button, it can be used in link, in menu, or in button components. And in terms of code, there's what we call foundation tokens, and we can use them to create different typography presets that are used for different purposes. And the last one is newly added is our transition presets. Is a combination of, is a collection of motion styles and states combined into one preset. And I have an example here as well. Motions, again, is a foundation tokens, and we use it to create different transition presets. So now you might be wondering, you talk about presets, foundations, how is that, are they related to your components? So every NewsKit component, it comes with a default. Based on our research, we probably made some opinionated decisions about what kind of tokens should be used as a default for this component. Let's look at this example for button. We have 3 different sizes, and within each size, we have a typography style preset, and we have mean width, mean height defined. So this is how it brings everything together. Now you might have a question. So what if I don't want to use your default setting? What if I want to have a different button? How do I do that? That brings us to the next part, customization. So in terms of customization, there are 4 different ways to do it, and they all come with a bit pros and cons. It's about choosing the right tool for the right job. And as you can see here, I've moved that arrow down, so the lowest, from the lowest impact to highest impact. And I'm going to go through each of them in the following slides. So let's have a look at the lowest impact one, the component overrides. So every component in NewsKit, it has a prop called overrides. It allows you to pass an object that mirrors the structure of your component defaults. What it does is that it just overrides that individual token is used on that specific instance of your component. It will make sense in a sec. So let's have a look at an example. I'll play this video. So this is our button component, and this is the playground on the documentation side. As you can see, I'm using default for the button right now. So that's our default button. And that object of overrides now is empty. So now if I choose a different style preset, button outlined primary, and the utility button 20, full width, and you can see that's how the object, the style preset typography preset is added to that object. Then you might wonder that, oh, that button outline primary is already defined by NewsKit, so it knows what style to use. But what if I want to create a style preset that doesn't exist in NewsKit? Well, you can do that as well, but you have to add this new style preset on the same level. So in NewsKit, we have this create theme function. It allows you to create a new theme and pass same overrides here. For example, the style preset pass to overrides, and here you can define your new style preset and the base state. And once that's done, you can use emotions theme provider to pass the new theme here. And again, like what I demoed earlier, you pass the style preset to that overrides object. Cool, so that's how you can say that now is purple background, which we don't have in NewsKit. So that's basically how you can customize a single instance of that button component. It is great, but what it doesn't allow you to do is to modify every instance of a component in one location. And this is where our next one, component defaults, come in. As I mentioned earlier, every component in NewsKit, it comes with a default, the default structure. And this default, for example, in this case, is a headline component, and it has a default specified here. Our headline component is basically made up by a kicker and headline text. And for those who don't know what the kicker is, it is in journalism, it's basically this text used in front of the headline. It's normally in capitalized. You can find a lot of them on the Sun website. So I have the default here from the NewsKit, but now I want to increase the gap between the kicker and headline text. And how do I do that? Again, we will have to modify it on the same level, pass the component overrides here. And then I'm going to mirror the structure of the headline components and change a different set of tokens. As you can see, we support different breakpoints. So I'm going to increase the token size. And then once this is done, I'm going to pass this new sim to my sim provider. And as you can see, I am not using any override, and every instance of the headline components should be changed now. And the last level of change will be the highest impact one. If you remember that, table we had earlier, that will be changing our foundations. And before I go into that, I just want to give you an idea about how the sim is created, our sim hierarchy. So currently, if a brand comes in and they want to use NewsKit, they can branch off from the NewsKit sim and pass their different sim overrides when they create the sim. They only need to edit the value that they want to change. So this is very handy if you want to create nested sim or sub sims. For example, the time sim and spot and radio sim, they all use the same typography, spacing, borders, and so on. The only thing, let's say, for example, in this case, is this color token, brand 010. And I want to change this to a different kind of hex code. And how do I actually do that? Here, I'm gonna share my code editor with you, and just to show you how we did it. And before that, I just want to show you what we mentioned earlier in terms of our theme file. These are foundations, colors, borders, and these are literal tokens, these are contextual tokens, fonts. We can use it to create different typographies. And all of those foundational files are actually exported from Figma. And so it was given to me by our designers in this JSON format, which is really great because I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is to create this new theme. And you can see that I have the base theme here is NewsKit Lite theme, and I'm passing some overrides, and those are other files we have here to change the typography of fonts. And now I just want to show you the spot and the radio theme. As I mentioned earlier, we are using the time theme as the base, and I don't want to change anything else. I just want to change the color. And if we have a look at the color. So within the color, I'm not changing anything, but only this token value now is using a different hex value. So what does it actually mean? What does it look like? I have an example here. So in our storybook, we have a theme checker component. It's basically, it includes almost every component in NewsKit. It just allows us to choose different themes and say what it will look like. So if we have a look at a NewsKit Lite theme, and I ask you, could you please have a look at this card component, for example? And then this is where that color token is used. So in NewsKit, our brand color is this blue color. So if now I change to TNL theme, you can see that not only is that brand color changed, the fonts is also changed. That's where we pass the overrides, include typography, fonts, spacing, and so on. But now if I'm going to show you the TNL radio and spot theme, and remember that we didn't change anything but one token in the color. So nothing else actually changed in terms of typography. The only change is the color. So same for the spot theme. So what this, as you can see that this is really easy for us to create some sub-themes really quickly while maintain the consistency in design. And I also want you to have a look when I switch the themes. So this is a TNL theme. You can see this is a TNL brand color, which is black. Once I change to radio, so everywhere that brand color is used, that token is used, is going to propagate through to all the other components. That's why, as I mentioned, that it has the highest level of change, because it's going to change everywhere that token value is used. It is normally used when you want to set some brand conventions. Cool. So that's basically everything I have for the NewsKit theming system. It's much more complicated than what I presented, but I think that gives you a general idea of what it looks like. At last, I just want to share a bit of news with everyone here today that we are going for open sourcing very soon. So check out our repo. Soon it will be publicly available, so you can contribute or follow us and leave any comments and give us feedbacks. Cool, that's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Some really good stuff in there as well, of course. I definitely understand the issue of having a huge scaling design system. So that's be interesting to be talking a bit later. So if you have any questions, please use the link and post your questions there. And then Xin, you're going to come back afterwards for the Q&A. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me see what is happening in the chat right now. Oh, you can't move the speaker's window. Okay, we have discovered a usability issue. So that's good to know for us for next time. Otherwise, we got some really good thumbs up and some applause. So that's very positive to see. All right, so that then takes us to our last speaker of today, which is Rafaela. And you're going to be talking to us about the metaverse.
Very exciting stuff.
Very exciting stuff. I'm very excited, as you can hear. So we are very excited. We have some really exciting talks, and now we're going to have another one. Rafaela, the digital stage is all yours.
Perfect. Just going to share my screen, confirming that you can see it.
We can indeed.
Gucci. All right. So today we're going to talk about design systems for Metaverse. But before we jump into, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Raf. I'm a UX designer at Gem 3 in Canada, and I'm very passionate about experiences. And that's how I discovered that I want to be a UX designer. It's that everything, it could be an experience. It's how you interact with brands. It's how you interact with stuff around you. It's how you perceive technology. So everything can be considered an experience. And that's also what Gem 3 thinks. So Gem 3 helps world top brands to launch products and design customer experiences beyond the digital. So we're going to get into the beyond part, but rather than making ads, we create relevance with consumers by attributing purposes and innovation to everything we do. And it's 100% everything we do. We think that our solutions live in the space between people and technology. And this is a very, very tiny space because we want to bring everything together and we want to create that huge image that everything can be innovation. And let's bring into the subject. So what is Metaverse? It's literally from sci-fi to your laptop. It's what we call the 3D internet. It's everything that we are seeing right now in the trend. And actually, Gen 3 has a trend report that I'm going to share with you afterwards. But let's go into the concept. So the word Metaverse is literally beyond universe. So it's the combination between them two. And it's a shared, persistent, 3D visual space linked to the perceived universe that we have. And let's just imagine that we're like buying a bike and we want to get fitted. And we have the whole space using a VR headset. I actually have one here that I can show you. It's an Oculus. So you can have whatever VR headset that you want, but having a VR headset allows you to enter this metaverse thing. And actually, if you're like buying a bike, getting fit in, and welcoming yourself into a new universe, you can actually have a lot of fun. So you can connect with friends, you can get fit in, you can get to a lot of places in the world, you can meet friends, you can get together and do whatever you want, but in the digital, in the 3D universe that you're going to create yourself, or you can join an existing universe. But the metaverse, it's not Second Life. I see a lot of people talking about that, and definitely metaverse. It's not a game. It's not something that Facebook is creating only. It's not something that it's not something closed. It's an open door universe. You can create one, you can join one, and it's very collaborative. It's a place that you can meet people. It's a place that you can create. It's a place that you can contribute. It's very open source. It's literally VR, AR, bringing together into a new world or a new perspective. So it's what we call the 3D internet. It's something that we're actually having trouble with the concept. So let's imagine that most people think, okay, so Metaverse, it's just something that Facebook is now creating, Meta is now creating, or it's something that it's not very accessible, or it's something that you need to have a VR headset to have it. So what is Metaverse? So we have all those questions, but definitely it's not Second Life. So it's not something that you can, it's not a game, it's not closed, it's very open, it's very wide, it's a very huge concept, and it's something that you should get involved early. So where do I stand? I am a fantastic innovator of the Metaverse. We should embrace everything that it's coming to our lives. Every innovation that you see, you should get a little piece of it before you even judge. So I love the Metaverse because it's a concept still. People are still beating what we want to have in the future. And I position myself between the Metaverse today, the things that we are seeing, that we're still defining, and the UX. So what I think about user experiences, it's basically that, as I said, everything is an experience. So we need to be very cautious for what we were creating and how we were creating, and how this system, this universe that we were creating is going to be in a few years. So if it's going to be a very toxic environment, that could happen, or if it's going to be a very friendly place where everyone can get together and have a good time. So I live in this space between and into the Metaverse that we have today, the user experience, and whatever experiences that we have there to help them build a very fantastic universe for people in the future. Okay, so what about design systems then? The concept of design systems that we saw here today, it hasn't changed. So it's design, coding, documentation, and scalability, everything together. And for the Metaverse, now we have a challenge that BBS is even more complex. Let's stop for a second and think about what it's going to be a universe if you're logged in the Metaverse. So I'm going to put my Oculus and I'm going to have this space. I have to have walls or some sort of like limitation so I can define the space that I'm into. What I'm going to see, how long or how distant it is the first object from my eyes, and what kinds of objects that I'm allowed to bring into this universe or that I can interact with them. So now imagine this is a little component and imagine this is the universe. There is a huge difference. It's like building Earth, but into a 3D universe, and everything is very concise. So how are you going to break those things into little pieces? Then you can create and replicate. So we have a few concerns with that. It's a multimodal interaction. So you're not in the flat UI anymore. So we're not discussing about buttons. We're not discussing about inputs. It's not simple things. They're elements and they're complex. So I think the first step to think in a design system for the Metaverse is literally thinking about how the universe is today in place as we're touching and interacting in the real world. Every material that we have to combining to create something else, it's also going to be like this in the Metaverse. So how can we expect those little elements to become then a design system? What I mean by that is it's a very high-level concept. We're just discussing this at a very high level because we haven't defined anything. We're just discovering. It's that basically what we think is that we have a space. So you're going to put your Oculus on or whatever device that you have, the VR headset, and you're going to have a space to look into. Whatever it's on your space and whatever you're going to define, it's your floor, for example, it's going to be a material. That material could be considered an atom, for example. And then this is going to become a place where you're going to stay into. So I'm going to put a chair, which could be a component. It's a thing mixed with other things that combine into a little component, which is a chair. And then you have the whole environment that you're into, if you want to customize to be your office online, for example. Then you have various components mixed into a, let's say, this system that I'm creating, which is an ecosystem because it's very live. So, and then you have your office. So how can I multiply this office to become something that is huge? How can I build a building then? I want to have multiple offices, different offices from different materials. So everything is possible. So I think the multimodal interaction is that we're not anymore in the flat design. We need to think as in a really space that we are right now and think about how can we bring elements from today's world into this multimodal interactions. Also, we have audio, which is something that nobody considers. So when you're in your house right now, you can hear things, even though you're not speaking, even though you're not doing anything. You can see the sound from the street. So I can see people talking outside my room. I can see my cats doing, playing with it and turning about my house. I can hear things even though I'm not speaking. So that's something to consider when you're in the universe. So the metaverse doesn't consider, at first it didn't, audio. So everything was like, you could put your VR, but you wouldn't have the effect of feeling that you're in there because you don't have the audio, you don't have the space, and you don't have, sometimes the elements are too close for you, and sometimes you have motion sickness. So there's a lot of elements that we should consider, but audio is something that creates an environment. So I think if you have elements like a background audio to help you create this universe would also be very, very helpful. And I think the key for creating something for the metaverse is design for physical spaces. The physical space that you have right now, your office, your house, your room, whatever it is, it's built in some engineering or in some way that you can comprehend and you can perceive, well, I'm in some place. I'm not in nowhere, I'm in somewhere. And for the metaverse, it's also a matter of, well, where am I? And how am I perceiving those objects around me? They're moving. Am I moving? How am I looking like to everything that is close to me? All those elements, those little elements, this very high level concept that we have, multimodal interaction, spatial audio, design for physical spaces, all those elements, they're contributing for you to create the first, what we're gonna call design system. And why is that? Every little component that we have in our universe, it's gonna be then combined into something very simple into the metaverse. And then we need to test it, how this is gonna behave, how am I gonna perceive? If I build an office in my metaverse, and then I realize, well, I'm not hearing anything outside my room. That feels weird. Why should I put in some background audio? Should I put a little element here to make me feel more comfortable? What is missing? It's the height of the element, it's the proximity. So those little elements actually are very important to define what are the concepts before we actually design elements as we see in the UIs for the metaverse. And we also have a huge barrier that I was speaking to, the motion sickness. So people who are using VR, and 1/3 of world population have this susceptibility to have motion sickness. It's something that you can stand. Like I have motion sickness for VR, and it's very weird. It's in the medical books actually, that you can see that women have more susceptibility to have motion sickness than men. And I feel like that's something that is very concerning because we see more men creating aspects for the metaverse, but I don't see anyone concerned if you're going to be able to live in the metaverse. So before we even jump into conclusions, so before we even talk about designing things for them, designing scalable things, how can we replicate those elements? We need to take in consideration that people using those this headsets, they doesn't feel real, and we need to make them feel real. It's not something that you're going to be, seeing in Hollywood. Oh, it's amazing. It's this space, it's this thing that can bring everyone together, but actually it doesn't work. So we need to fix those little problems. Motion sickness is definitely one of them. We need to understand what causes motion sickness for VR. I think even though you have a very scalable system to build things in the metaverse, if we don't solve this problem, we're not going to go any further. And actually, the next steps for the brands are very obvious, but I think we need to move quickly. We need to understand the basic elements, the life that we have in real life. creates this amazing environment that we have, and how can we replicate that to the metaverse? I think sometimes by my perception, it's that when I feel like I'm in the real world, because lots of things are happening. So I'm always interacting with different objects. I'm always interacting with different things. I can always touch something, and I can never bring something from nowhere to where am I right now. So if I don't have a cup in my room, I cannot just like, bring one here. So there's like this little perceptions of the spacing and everything that it's very comes from architecture, engineering, very standard things that we don't see in technology. So while I was talking about UI elements and design systems as it is in the code, documentations, that doesn't exist in the metaverse. It's basically, how can you build a chair without having the materials to build it itself? You can just click it and do it, but that's not right as well, because there's no standards, so people can replicate. So I feel like the next steps for the brands is just to first understand the concepts, the basic elements, what makes us feel like it's real and it's a real world for us. Resolve the motion sickness problem. Move quickly. Everybody's going into the metaverse. It doesn't matter if you don't like it or not. I don't really fancy the metaverse and the thing that I'm going to be using every day. Let's say 24 hours a day. I'm not going to be in the VR for 20 hours a day, but it can be for 2 hours to see my mom. She's in Brazil, I'm in Canada. We can put our headsets on, we can create a space and we can get together. That's something that we can do. And actually it's incredible how we see that it's evolving from when the internet started, where you could just like type a message and someone will receive your message faster than writing a letter. And now we can FaceTime, and now we can create a place that I can have a digital avatar with those little elements and create a space so I can get together with people. So this is happening, and it's gonna happen. It's not something that it's gonna be conveyed by Meta, or it's something that another brand is gonna take over. No, it's for everyone. So we need to take place, because I feel like there is no way we can create scalability and perform virtually without having everyone together and collaborating for this world to exist. So yes, move fast, quickly. I think we should also share a lot of our knowledge, everything that we find out about how the standards are, how we can better design for the metaverse, how can we better deploy, and having support from developers is very important. So I'm a UX designer, and just think about the experience. But I also think that there's no way you can do it without developers. I cannot build anything without debugging my code, without debugging every design that I do. So if developers are not the first people leading this generation and leading this, whatever it is that we're going to call metaverse in a few years, this is going to be a problem, because we're going to build things that are not working anymore, and the experience is not going to be the best. So people are just going to exit. So I think it's a collab work between developers, designers, and also always thinking about the experience. This is very high level, guys, because I didn't want to bring really elements that how you can create a design system for the metaverse, because we don't know that yet. So it's just a combination of elements, precisions, maybe concepts that we have from design and concepts that we have from UX, best practices. So feedbacks all the time. When you're like interacting with people, you have feedbacks all the time. The world gives you feedbacks. So if it's gonna rain, I can see in my window it's gonna rain. So all those feedbacks need to be recreated into the real world. Also, how you can communicate in a metaverse. Right now, it's just, I think it's movement, and you can just, I saw some more advanced stuff that you can talk and people can see your mouth moving, but it's also a very interesting way that this world is not fully created. So you can spot some bugs, you can spot some missing things, but yes, I think it's in a very high level way that we can understand how this is going to go. And speaking through design systems and everything that I am advocating for, I think that we should have more open source initiatives for building things in the metaverse. It's too very complex, and it's not a simple wording. Everything is very complex. It's very code orientated. unit, whatever you want to call it, but I think it's very early days of internet for them. And if you want to, get involved, just start like looking for ways that you can get involved. Start looking for communities that you like. Start, moving fast in terms of like getting to know how this is going to go and help us to build. For me, I think what I'm researching right now, it's basically how we're going to measure the distance and proximity of elements, how we're going to see objects in the world, how we're going to touch them, how we're going to interact with them, how can we replicate that, how can we build fast things. So we're still in a very, very early days of this research. And I feel like in a few years, I think 3 the max, we're going to see huge worlds being created in the metaverse side. Well, I think that's everything that I had today. I have the more trends report for you guys. And whatever the goal is, let's make it happen. And you can get in touch with me anytime. And Louis, I think this is going to be very exciting to see the next steps.
Oh, it's going to be very exciting to see the next step. Thank you so much, Raf. That was awesome. Yeah, it's kind of like literally a new world. So this is very exciting stuff. Okay, so if you have any questions for Raf, please keep putting them in the link. We got some great questions for everybody. So I guess without further ado, we should thank the speakers. Fantastic. And we want to welcome you all back onto the digital stage. We are going to go to the Q&A. I always do this. I always ask our speakers to come with some questions, and also obviously I'll have a look through their presentations beforehand to try to get some inspiration, because I'm always worried, like, what if people don't have questions? And it's always like I keep on reloading the Slido. But do you know what? There are questions, and they're great. They always are. So we're going to kick off straight away. The first question is probably more at you, Reza, but it could be something that maybe others can recognize as well. So you mentioned something about analytics. And so how do you check that developers, how do you check how the developers are use the components? Because you said that was really important. Interesting enough, that's also one of the questions that I wrote down, and I know lots of people are asking this. You mentioned analytics. Could you elaborate a bit more? What information is it that you're getting and how?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we think of analytics, we think of it like traditionally on the website. So seeing how people are using the documentation website, where they get stuck on it, what are their paths through it. But we have implemented analytics that run during the post-install phase of NPM. So if you're a web developer, you do npm install to download all of your libraries, including the libraries that our team build as part of the design system. And then we have a sneaky post-install script that runs, and it searches through the usual places where your source code would live. And it takes your code and creates an abstract of your React code or your HTML elements. And then the moment we spot a component that has our keyword in it, so we have a name for our design system, the moment it sees that name in the component, it says, great, I found usage. So it'll copy that code snippet along with however many levels of depth above and below that we care about. So I think we capture, 3 levels above. It'll copy that, the name of the page, so the name of the file, and then it will send that to our central log server, along with some identifying information, like what was the project name, what's the unique identifier for that project in the company, and also some contact details that we can use to follow up with the engineers to find out exactly what they're building and how they're building it and how we can help them. So very big brother, which is why I caveated it with, might not be something you can do in the open source, at least without telling people you're doing it. But something that's, I guess, the privilege of being able to work internal and do this sort of thing.
Yes, definitely something for internal, but that's really cool. So yeah, that really is actually getting the actual usage, which is fantastic. I guess the follow-up question from my side, which is also something that you mentioned on, I think you did an estimation, you mentioned something about money, it was for something like 7 million, about how much you'd save. Where does the estimation come from, and how is the estimation done? And is this using this analytic system that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I knew I would get it because you can't put $7 million without getting someone to question it.
There's a lot of people here who wants to save $7 million. They
Right,
want to know how.
Right. And I mean, with design systems, it's difficult to have a direct business value, right? It's not a product that you sell where you can say, well, we charged customers this amount of money and we made that. So the way we did it is we surveyed our users, our developers, and we said to them, tell us how much effort it would be in terms of hours spent to build a small component. And we gave them an example of a small component, then a medium one, and then a large complexity component. And then we took the average of all these scores that they gave us in terms of time spent, multiplied that by how many components of ours they were using in their projects, and then multiplied that by the average salary, like run rate of an engineer at our firm. So what we're kind of trying to put a finger in the air and understand is how much money in terms of developer time are we saving the company? So it's not a perfect science, but I also think that it does kind of illustrate how much time is being saved by a design system.
Yeah, good. That's a good way of doing it. I think because as we all know, getting started with a design system, getting that buy-in is always a challenge. And if you are able to sort of give any type of inclination figure of how much money you're going to be saving, that would be really, really useful. So Xin, I'm going to move over to you. So we're talking scalable design systems here, actually from both of you, from both JPMorgan and from NewsUK. And you mentioned that there's a lot of brands and products that NewsKits currently support. And how many are there?
I would say about 4 external ones and 1 internal one. So we have the Sun, the Times, Virgin Radio, and Dow Jones. We also have an internal team, our own NewsKit team using our components as well. And it's currently expanding, so we will have a few more big brands using our components very soon.
Excellent. That's a lot. And so maybe this is a sort of a separate question, but kind of also like how long does it take to sort of keep that Figma library going, and like how to initiate to set that up?
Yeah, I'm from engineering, so I'm not quite familiar with Figma, but I think we only started using about half a year ago. I think, yeah, it didn't take long, and I think the designer is really happy with it. And what I said about exporting the Figma for our foundations, that is using a plugin in the Figma. And it's really helpful. But I'm currently working on actually just have the same exported, have it in as a NPM package, and then we can just download it, put it out in our theme checker, and then we can see what it looks like.
And is that sort of how you then manage to keep the library, the Figma library, in sync with the React components, or?
Yeah. I think each brand, they have their brand styles in the Figma libraries. I hope I'm saying right because the designers are not here. Yeah, I think that's basically how it's working right now.
Awesome. Okay, so one question for you, Raf. So I'm wondering, we're talking about things like Figma library and keeping your components in the metaverse. When we're now starting to measure macro things like you were talking about, we've got to think of space and volume and sound. How do you guys started doing that in any way, or what are your thinking around that, or how do you sort of keep that library?
It's kind of crazy, but right now it's a mix of sketches. So I really have to draw things to understand the volume, proximity, how you touch it, spacing and everything. Proportions as well, like if it's big, if it's going to be small. Defining proportions for Metaverse, it's like in the 3D world, it's almost impossible to like be 100% in the standard. But you can, type small, medium, large, and we also use Figma for that. So you sketch, you put it on Figma, you can create a little spacing there. It's not going to be precisely the same because Figma is just 2D, but somehow you can document at least what are the types of things that you're creating, what elements you're creating, and then you can export those elements into the Blender or whatever software that you use. Then you can bring it back once the work is finalized. So you can have the sketch, you can have the proportions, measures, and everything documented, the final piece, which is whatever you have in Blender, and then you can bring it to the Metaverse and take some screenshots, and you can bring it back.
It's definitely about being clever and smart and innovative in this stage. That's awesome. Really, really cool. Have you guys have a lot of sort of interest from brands regarding the Metaverse?
Yeah, we have developed a what we call complex land for Adidas, and it was a very challenging project. It's not 100% Metaverse because not everybody could access, but yes, we're getting lots of interest. And it's also like, it's interesting to see that they don't know what to expect from this sport, and whatever you can create, because we say right now everything is possible, but what is everything? What we can do, what are the first steps? So yes, it's a very like wild first days in the internet for them.
Fantastic, good. Some early days will be really interesting to see where that goes. I'm sure there will be could be a part 2 of this at some point in the future. Would be really interesting. So I've got a question here. This one is at Reza, but actually I think this question is suitable for all of you. This is about, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? I think that's something that we can all look back on and think of. So Reza, starting with you, if you did it all again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like the lessons part of it is like me sort of cathartically going through it, the process again. But I think the one big thing for me would have been to just pick a single UI library earlier on, because we tried to keep everyone happy and support everything. And what that really means is you can only offer the lowest common denominator, right? The lowest experience that works across every type of technology. And doing that just meant that we weren't doing anything particularly well, and we were spinning our wheels and not really advancing as quickly as we wanted to. So by just picking one thing and focusing on it and just demonstrating what was capable with it, I think we kind of sold that to the whole organization and got everyone behind us.
Is that a decision that was sort of tried to be a democratic decision, or is it decentralized, or who actually is kind of, well, I guess I'm asking, who owns the design system, or like at that stage, was that not defined yet?
Yeah, so the core UI engineering team and design team own the design system. It's something that we looked firstly at the applications that had been built, right? So we didn't want to pick something where the majority had decided to go in a different direction, because that would have required a lot of rewrites. Wouldn't have been a great use of everyone's time. So we picked something that was being used a lot. We also looked at the industry and thought, where do we think is the safest bet to place here? And it was also something that we consulted with various other teams and organizations to understand, is this the direction you guys are going in as well? Does this seem like the right move to make? So there's a combination of things, not authoritarian, quite collaborative, but yeah, it was owned by the central user interface and user experience team.
Awesome, thank you, cool. Obviously, so you got your product owner who is sort of responsible, just so I understood it correctly, so you have a product owner whose job is to be the product owner for the design system itself. That's right, yes. Excellent. Okay, because the reason I wanted to ask that is because we actually spoke, we had a product owner for a design system speak to us last time, actually from NewsUK, and he was talking about KPIs. So for those of you who are interested in different ways of doing KPIs for design systems, I recommend you to have a look at the last online DSL online from December. Xin, what would you do differently if you had to do it all over again?
Well, for me personally, I would like to have the analytics that Reza just mentioned, that we can prove that we're actually, so many people are using our components and we're actually saving so much money. But I think in terms of my topic today, theming, is that we probably kind of underestimate how difficult it is to create a themable design system. it sounds like a great idea. Actually, we come a long way to achieve what we presented today. So yeah, if we probably have a bit context, we probably would start with what we have today, rather than going through the workarounds and so on. Yeah, that's probably it.
That's a good one. Fair enough. Excellent. And yeah, maybe there is some collaboration here in the future on understanding exactly how we can all get in on this analytics. Reza, I think there is definitely more for you to come from you there to come on this. Raf, what would you do if you did things over again? What would look different from your side?
I would study engineer. I think I totally missed the point when I started doing designs and I realized, well, I cannot debug them alone, and I really didn't understood how technology would function on that side, and I totally underestimated the job. So I started doing the designs, and then the designs were not be 100% accurate when represented in 3D, for example. So it's not only UX, you need to have a multi-channel understanding of everything that is happening there. So I would definitely study engineering first before jumping into everything that I did. And also, like, never underestimate the time that it takes to build something that is very complex, because it takes time to, you know, just define the experience and then think about the 3D, how are you going to document this, and who's going to build it. So yes, it's a very complex job.
Yeah, I can hear this is very complex, but as you say, you guys are in the early stages, so there is still some time to do things differently, I'm sure. So fantastic, excellent, all very good, exciting responses there. So I'm going to we're going to move over to a question. Sorry, I'm trying to gather because there's a couple of questions on tokens here. So I am trying to get them all together, see if I can turn that into like one question. Oh, sorry, my bad, it's classes. So first question, this is Xin here, interested in hearing about allowing classes. Doesn't this make the future upgrades a little bit more complex, or even a lot more complex?
You mean using the things?
Yeah, I think that's what they mean, yeah.
Actually, I think it makes it easier because all our components are using those tokens in our sim. So when we push for a new component, we introduce a new component. If you are using the right tokens, you get all the styles and everything for free. If you dump your sim on that component, you get it already there. So it's actually, it's really helpful. It can help you to have that component very quickly if it's done correctly. Yeah, I haven't come across anyone saying that it's actually more complex. Yeah, that's
good, awesome. And also, since you mentioned tokens here as well, so they override the tokens that you were talking about earlier. Can they be overridden on a specific breakpoint, or how does that work?
Yeah, actually, every of our component defaults and also the overrides, they all support breakpoint. So if you want to know more, if you go to our documentation site and look at the API, every prop, if they support breakpoints, it will be MQ string or something. It means it supports a single string, and it also supports different breakpoints. So it's very, very flexible.
Awesome, great. Sorry, just looking for the next question here. What would you say is the most, for Reza here, actually, again, this is a very good question for everybody. What would you say is the most challenging part about scaling a design system? Obviously, especially, I mean, you guys, JPMorgan and NewsUK, huge scaling's going on here.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. The most difficult thing is getting everyone to buy into a design system, but also buy into like doing things the right way. Because anyone who's worked on a design system will tell you that like you'll have the best intentions and you'll get the stuff out there, and people won't really understand the vision behind a design system, and they'll hack it and they'll change things, and they'll go off and do their own satellite design system or micro design system just so that they have ownership or can change things around. So it's all about getting, you know, thousands of people to all agree that, you know, if we share and reuse, there's so much value in doing that. because as engineers, we all kind of want to go off and do our own thing and go at our own speed. So for me, that's the most challenging thing, is getting a whole organization to like follow you and do things the right way, do things the open source way, all contribute to a shared code base as opposed to going off and doing our own thing.
I've got a follow-up on that in a second, but I'm going to let these guys talk as well about what you're finding to be the hardest thing about the scaling one.
Okay, for me, I totally agree with you. And I think the most heartbreaking one is you build this component, you spend a lot of time researching the accessibility guidelines, and you give it to other teams, and the engineers just do some CSS hacks. And then it's totally misused, and it's just like your own baby being destroyed. Yeah, so it's basically, we actually enforced that. We did a lot of research on accessibility to make sure they're accessible. We want other people to be aware of it as well, follow the guideline, use our components properly, and we're always there to support them if they need any help. Yeah, I think that's probably it.
Fair enough. Great. Awesome. And Raf?
I think that it's everybody buying in that you need a design system for the metaverse, because everybody thinks, well, let's just design and let's see what's going to go. And then you realize there's no way I'm going to do all this work and all this effort again. So developers, they go crazy when we say, let's do it again. And we don't have any standards. We don't have nothing. We just have to design. So we need to recreate everything over and over and over. So yes, it's necessary so you can have at least some standards where you can start an interface without having to, just going over the designs and all the process then to code. So if you just want to create spaces just in the early days, just define patterns that we can take over. And there's people that can hack, yes, but it's very unlikely. It's very, for the metaverse, that doesn't exist, because all these small things, they're very complex. So people won't hack them, but they would try to, bypass everything and just create something very new that it's not the best, or try some templates, which is not the best as well.
Okay, awesome, great, fantastic. The buy-in, I mean, obviously we can all agree on getting buy-in for the design system is very hard. And as I mentioned before, when you do get that buy-in, we don't necessarily have that figure of being able to say, this is how much money we're going to save, and this is how brilliant it is. And, because I always feel, I feel like I repeat myself every time I talk to a potential project, and it's like, it's going to save you money, it's going to save you time, but it is a product and you need people dedicated to it. And as soon as people hear that, they get terrified. So how did you guys get buy-in before? I mean, especially you, Reza, before you were able to show this magic number to people back in when, how did you guys manage to get buy-in from the large organization or the team?
Yeah, it's a really difficult problem to solve. For us, I think it was a combination of things. One was to have an organization where there's a lot of focus on having one cohesive look and feel, style, and experience across multiple applications. Because if you don't have an agreement that that's something we should achieve, then what's the point of the design system? And then you need a certain level of scale whereby you have so many dev teams and UX teams and product teams working all at the same time globally. They're not really speaking to each other on a daily basis, but yet they need to build experiences that seem consistent to an end user, even though they've never communicated. So you need those two things. And then the other thing would be to like fail at doing it once, right? Show that, without a product owner, without a proper technology team, without a proper centralized design team, it doesn't survive, it doesn't work, it shrivels up and dies over a while. So it's about showing, the value of it, and then showing that the investment needs to be made for this to be successful.
Excellent, brilliant. I don't know if anybody else has any further to put in, or how you experience the buy-in.
I think just the value of time. It's very important once you start designing, then you realize this is going to take hours, days, weeks, and then you're just like, now we're going to do it again, and we don't have any foundation to do that. And we are a very small team in that case. So building something in the 3D world, it can be complex, as I said, but also it saves a lot of time if you already have some foundation that you can replicate. So it speeds up so good, and everything, all the standards that you have, accessibility, for example, which is a very concerning matter. It's also accomplished by the time that you have the standard, by the time that you have a design system already preset for you.
Absolutely. And for you, Xin, anything to add?
Not really much, because I think I'm not really involved in that aspect. But I think for us, it's very good because our management actually realized we want to save money. We want to have a design system we can use on the times and on the sun. We don't want to keep hiring engineers coming in, spend hours just to make a button. So obviously, design system is the right choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys got a really great organization around that. So yeah, and it's really nice to hear that all of you are coming from places where that is appreciated and that's really working well. So let me see how are we doing for time here. I want to see if we can find another good question for you guys. So, oh yes, this is a good question. I like this one. So we all talking about how much easier it is to have a design system, but how difficult it actually is to get started. And we all know that building a design system takes a lot of time and effort. And there are many moments where, I was going to say, between the four of us here and anyone's watching, we can probably admit to all of ourselves that sometimes you might wonder, is it really worth it? The answer is yes, it always is worth it. Anyone who's watching, it always is worth it. But tell me about that moment when you realized, oh my God, this is so worth it. I can start with you again, Reza.
Sure. I mean, there's been a few cases. There's been times where like developers have joined the company new and they've been like, oh my God, thank God that you guys have this. Like the last place I worked, it was like the Wild West. Like everyone was creating all their UI from scratch. And it's so nice to see that people have like thought through like what are the guidelines, what are the UX guidelines, what are our principles, come up with standard components. So that was nice to see that we're not the worst, at least. And then also being in like demos and seeing applications that you've never worked on, and yet they've used the design system, and seeing like the high quality of those experiences. I mean, that makes you feel like at least the documentation, the components, the designs, like they were able to achieve their goal.
Fantastic. That's a good one. For you, Xin, when did you have an aha moment?
Yeah, I think for me, it will be when other brands started to get in touch, like Dow Jones. They said, oh, we really like your design system. We want to create one ourselves. And then they created something really amazing. And then I go to their storybook and look at, oh, they are using our components. They add extra functionality. And it's just it's great to see that it's actually being used by the other teams and is creating value for them.
I agree. I think that's a good one, is when other teams contact you. Raf?
Being a UX designer, I know the importance of having a design system, from the flat design, from interfaces online. But when I built the first world, it was actually a replica of my room in my child times. I realized, okay, I want to change just a simple color here. Everything needs to be scrapped up and built it again. And then I realized, okay, this is not going to happen if we don't have, how can we bring the concept of design system to this word as well? And then I started researching about it, and I saw some folks discussing styles and, just little elements and concepts. And then I realized this might be worth it to invest time. And after I could understand just a little bit, some elements that you can reutilize and everybody can contribute to it. That's very interesting. So you can actually bring the concept of a very standard design system from web to the metaverse. It's very important. It doesn't make you waste that much time and money that you're going to be investing in something that it's just going to go to waste after you play with it. and yes, after I play with it and I realized, okay, I need to scrap this whole word and build it again. It's like, it's not the same as playing with Minecraft, you know. It's much more complex. So yes, I understood that I need something very, you know, consistent.
I'm gonna have to admit here, Rafa, that I was a little bit like, oh, is it going to be like being in Minecraft? And then you said that exactly. So I'm glad I wasn't the only one who thought that. Fantastic. Okay, so everyone's got really great aha points, aha moments. I 100% agree with all of you. I think it's just like, especially the one where you say added teams, or you know, you just understand that, oh my God, this work that's ahead of us now is going to be so much faster and so much easier to get done. So that's really good. So obviously, you said, as you know, your design system at NewsKit it's widely used, and I should probably remember this, but I don't. It's not open source, is it?
It's going for open source really, really soon. I can't promise.
I had a feeling that, yes, absolutely. That I think actually your Alice mentioned that last time. That's what. Cool. So you guys are really close now to go open source.
Yeah. I can't really promise a date. I'm not allowed to promise a date, but
that's okay. We're not going to hold you to it. So how is the preparations going for that? It must be a real buzz around.
Yeah, I think it's mainly my principal engineer doing the work, but we have a few tickets that I think we only need a few touch-ups, then they are ready to go. But overall, I think it's been quite smooth.
Excellent. I'm pretty sure that Design System London will be tweeting about it when it happens as well. So obviously, we're very excited about that. Reza, obviously your organization is slightly different and there might be some challenges, but are there any plans for open source for your design system at all?
Yeah, you're right in the sense that obviously it's a financial services company. It's a pretty highly regulated environment. But over the last 5 years, there's been a big shift, at least to the company, in terms of open sourcing some of our best work. So you can check out JPMorgan Chase on GitHub and see some of the work that we've open sourced. In terms of our own design system, I think there is an appetite amongst our senior leadership to show it and for it to also be like a great form of advertising and hiring. We just need to go through and make sure that the changes that are needed in order to make it suitable for the general public are made in advance. So maybe by year end, but we'd have to see.
Absolutely. There is still hope. Okay, that's awesome. Raf, I was going to ask you actually around how does that look for you guys, like open source and the metaverse and sort of VR? Like what, tell me more.
We can share in a very informal way. So we can see people sharing stuff that doesn't really work. But we're not in a position that we have something solid to share and let people contribute. Everything right now is just testing. We can share knowledge or everything that we learned from in the past that didn't work, but we can not be in a position that we are sharing something that is very solid, that people can use and reuse per se, and just build things with it. However, internally we have some standards and we have something that we can show as a concept, and people can take advantage of that to start building their own. But right now we can just share it very informally, oh, here's the thing that I built it, test it in your VR, and then if it works, okay, that's good. But if it doesn't, right now we don't have it.
It's coming. I'm sure it will be coming at some point. I have one last question for you, Rafa, and it's basically, you mentioned earlier about doing the research for what it's going to be like in the future. Maybe a bit of an odd question, but how are you doing that exploratory work? Like where do you find the sources on this, which I'm assuming is a still fairly new thing?
First, you need to define what kind of headset you're going to be using. So Oculus is very popular right now. So when you define what kind of environment you're going to be working with, it's easily to find people that has this kind of headset. And then you can preset some words or some apps that people can share. For coding, it's easier because you can have the code in your computer and then you can test it how it is on your computer. You can simulate words and you can actually connect your device to the computer, so you have both screens. and you can also record your screen so you can test it before. But it's right now, because of the pandemic, it's very hard to test it with other people, because if the person doesn't have the headset, then you need to bring her into the environment. It needs to be a physical space with measures and safety and everything, so people don't stumble at things. I usually do that, so I stumble at walls all the time, and it's very weird. So you need to have a control space so people can come in, put the headset, feel safe to test it, and touch things, interact with things. There's no smell, so you can only have audio and the sight. But maybe someday. So maybe someday we're gonna have smells as well.
I'm sure that's coming. I don't know, I'm going to give my age away now, but I have a feeling that used to be something that you could rub on. Anybody remember those stickers that you could rub on and they gave you a smell? I'm sure if you can incorporate that somehow. There you go. That's an idea right there for you. This was fantastic. I had so much fun listening to all of you. It's been brilliant. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up here. I think just got to do due diligence. I think we've gone through all the questions. I hope I haven't missed anyone's question. Let me quickly see. No, I think that's all the questions that we had. Oh, actually, we do have one quick question. We can take this question very quickly. How to work with multiple product teams and keep the design system in sync? I think we touched a little bit on that already, but does anybody feel like they want to pick that question up? Like, how are you working with multiple product teams and keeping the design system in sync? I get no takers, and then I do my favorite. I pick a volunteer. Jin, you're going to have to start with this one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know what it means exactly, but we have different other teams using our design system. And how do we keep in sync between what they have and what we have in design system?
I am assuming that is the question here. Yeah. So I'm guessing that there's a lot of different product teams and there is a lot of different design systems. Is there a centralized place? I'm assuming there is, so where people can sort of see the source of truth. I'm going to turn this into a source of truth question. Where does the source of truth live?
For the design, the source of truth is in Figma. The other brands could access the Figma libraries. And for code, all our components are documented on the documentation site. So they can actually check the APIs, the props used, and everything that we, accessibilities, and everyone could access those sites. So if engineering other teams pick that up and want to use our components, and he can just check out the documentation. If that is enough, not enough, we actually have support channels for each of the brand we support, and then every day if they have a question, they can ask us straight away.
Fantastic, that's a great setup. What does it look like for you guys, Reza, are you
that was for me?
For you guys?
Yeah, so for us, our eyes and ears are product designers. So they're the designers who are embedded in the product teams. And they have a twice a week forum that they all come together and they share what they're designing for their particular products and what the developers have built. And that acts as like a good way of seeing what's going on in the state of all the products that are using the design system. It's where we hear about a lot of candidates for contribution, but it also acts as a way for the designers and the core design system team to make sure that syncing is happening between the two worlds, because we want our product teams to go really quickly to meet customer need, and the design system can't always go as quickly as them, and maybe it shouldn't. So that forum acts as a good way to keep the two updated.
Awesome. And Raf, for you guys, what do you do?
We just stay sync. We just communicate, because right now we don't have any answers. So we just communicate. We try to, we test it. We record videos and show what we were doing and how we were doing. And it's very primitive, but it's also fun to see, because some way we started doing that in the very early stages of whatever design system that we have today that Reza and Xin are presenting. Someday we started by doing that, sharing knowledge, just dropping a message or just taking a screenshot, just showing how the code works. So right now it looks precisely like that for us, and showing how important it is to create standards that you're going to reuse, it's incredible. Like, this is a little component that you can reuse in your work. This is a little component that you can reuse to create, let's say, a digital event. How are you going to create a stage, for example? We could have this meetup in the Metaverse someday, maybe soon. And how are you going to do that? So yes, just collaborating.
Awesome. Brilliant. That was our last question. Thank you, everybody who gave all such great questions. Want to thank the speakers for taking the time to be with us and for putting these presentations together. We've seen various maturity here. We got a very mature, widely used design system, which is just about to go open source. We got another huge design system, which is on its way there. It's got some great analytics built into it. And then we got something which is literally at the early stages of a brand new world of design system in the metaverse. Fantastic. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, everybody who joined us, people from everywhere. Fantastic. I need to just do some wrapping before we go. Not wrapping, I'm going to wrap things up. I will definitely not be doing any wrapping, don't worry about that. So we will be back. Design System London will be back. If we're lucky, we might be back in person at some point. And we have a vision that we are going, now that we have gone global, we will always be online, whether we are in person or not. We will always have a live stream. Hopefully, we might be able to set up Design System London and visit some other places at some point once we are allowed to do that properly. But in the meantime, do follow us on Twitter and follow us on, join us on Meetup so you know when the next one is. And I think that's it. If you have any questions about YLD, check out the website. There are some jobs there. I know these guys were talking about companies hiring as well. Yeah, the one question that we normally get, is there a recording? Yes. This is the recording. There's a live stream. You can go back and view it on YouTube as many times as you want. Normally, we will also let you know when the complete video, because we do a bit of editing and get the good stuff together. When that's out, we'll let you know. And I think we can also share the presentation decks as well. They normally go out as well. So all of this good stuff. If anybody wants to speak at the next one or future, please use the form and then or contact us directly and say, I have something to share on the design system. This is exactly what these guys did, and it was fantastic. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, London and Canada and the rest of Europe and the world who's been watching. Have a fantastic rest of the week. And see you all in a DSL number 3 very soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Luis.
Bye.